Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Safe and Sound Podcast, a podcast about the intersection of music and mental health. I'm your host, Jeremy Houtsma, licensed mental health therapist. If you've listened to the podcast before, you may have heard me mention Bellingham, Washington. It's currently where I've moved to and where I've lived before. It's a small college town nestled between Mount Baker and the Bellingham Bay. Its population is mostly made up of retirees, college students, and as of recently, young families. You know, from small places come amazing music scenes. It wasn't uncommon in the late 90s and early 2000s to find shows going on in garages, basements, and churches in Bellingham. When the indie and emo scene were taking off in New Jersey, Omaha, Chicago, and other areas, it was taking shape and form in the Pacific Northwest. Out of that scene, a band called The Pale, or as they would later be known, The Pale Pacific, emerged. The Pale melded elements of piano rock, indie music, and pop. They were unique and their songs infectious. They made waves in the Pacific Northwest scene, getting major radio play, write-ups in Rolling Stone and Spin magazine, and being courted by major labels. My guest is the drummer and manager of that band, Greg Swinehart. Greg has an uncanny ability to remember people's names and faces. I met Greg 20 years ago as the band was touring through Philly. I recently reconnected with Greg at a show, and he recognized me immediately. In this episode, Greg and I talked about his time in the band, his decision to waylay his plans to go to school to become a therapist, and how music serves him in a mental health capacity. From small towns come great things, and Greg is no exception. Here's the interview. Why don't we just really quickly start off just like where you grew up?
I was born in Walnut Creek, California, East Bay, San Francisco. I'm the only member of my family that wasn't born in Washington. My dad is from Spokane. My mom was born in Mount Vernon. My mom was born in Seattle, but she graduated in Mount Vernon, up by you. My two older sisters were born in Seattle. My parents met and got married in Seattle, and then moved down to the Bay Area. That's where I was born. I just say that because
move out of the Bay.
My dad got a job in San Francisco.
Okay. I'm familiar with Walnut Creek. My wife grew up in Fremont.
Oh, great.
So we go back there all the time, yeah.
So you know the East Bay, yeah. So I grew up in the East Bay, San Francisco suburbs. Everywhere that I knew was a place I could get to on my bike, and pretty awesome place to grow up for me, just because everybody lives in the Bay Area. I really, really liked that. And I didn't, you kind of don't know what you have until you move away. So when I was 15, my parents really wanted to get back to the Northwest. That was kind of always their plan. My mom grew up in the Navy, so she was moving every 4 years. So she had this internal oh yeah, we got to get out of here as soon as possible because that's what I've done my whole life. We'd move every 4 years. So my whole childhood, my mom was saying well, we're going to get back to the Northwest someday. And I was like, I don't want to move. I like it. I like it here.
I like the sun. It's nice.
Yeah, totally. So I really liked growing up in Concord, California, is where I'm from. And but I moved up to Bellingham when I was 15. My parents really wanted to get back up to the Northwest, and instead of moving to back to Seattle, they moved to Bellingham. So I finished high school in Bellingham, went to college in Bellingham at Western, and then after that, just kind of realized, you can be in a band in Bellingham, but the precedent that had been set is you eventually have to move to Seattle if you want to play music. So I moved to Seattle.
So you guys moved to, why Bellingham? Why'd you guys move to Bellingham?
Well, so my parents had lived in the Bay Area for 19 years, and they went on this road trip to figure out where in Seattle they wanted to live, and they really disliked it. And they were like, we lived there so long ago that our Seattle is no longer available to us. They were really sad. They were really bummed because it had been the plan for quite a while. And so they went up to visit my uncle who lives up in Ferndale, north of Bellingham. And my uncle did the hard sell. He drove them to the top of Mount Baker one day. They had dinner on Bellingham Bay. He really did the hard sell on this is really the place you want to be. And by the end, my parents realized Bellingham feels like Seattle 20 years ago to us.
Right.
It feels like the home we want to move to. So my sister and I had this glorious week with my parents out of town over the summer. just all sugar cereals and like
Nice.
ice cream. And friends spending the night. That's the week I saw Spinal Tap.
Nice.
Because, yeah, oh my gosh, the greatest week in history. My friends and I didn't get it, actually. My drum teacher growing up was friends with Michael McKean in
Nice.
Spinal
Oh,
Tap. So he's
awesome.
like, you got to see it. It's like comedy gold. And so we watched it, and it was like, we didn't get it at all. So, but a couple years later, I watched it. I was like, okay, maybe I just wasn't old enough because this is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
You were like, I don't understand. Knobs don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
When
go
do the
to
jokes
11.
happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
This guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
I mean, I was just so accustomed to like hard punchlines like
Right.
SNL,
Right.
that we didn't get it. So anyway, so my parents get home. I remember I was eating like a McDonald's cheeseburger, and my mom walks in and says, "We're moving to Bellingham, Washington." And we had this world map on our wall. And I looked at it, and Bellingham, Washington was on the world map. So I was like, that must be a good sign. At least
it's on a map somewhere.
On a world map between Seattle and Vancouver, British Columbia, there's a town called Bellingham. So I think we're going to be good. Yeah, I mean, my first thought was I'm going to step outside of my house, which will be like a trailer. I don't know why that was my first visual. And I will have to have a boot on because I will be stepping into a large puddle because it rains there all the time. That was my 15-year-old idea of what Bellingham was going to be. And then we got there, and it was just like such a beautiful place. But I was really struck by how racist Bellingham was. The things that people in my school would say is just not something that people would say in California, because you wouldn't say racial slurs where I grew up because you were friends with everybody.
Right,
everybody was around, and there was no need for that, And so I kind of learned when I was 15, I moved to Bellingham, that like, man, when you're not around everybody, you really start to kind of other different types of people. And that really bothered me when I moved to Bellingham. So that was pretty weird. But after high school, I went to Western and got a pretty solid group of friends, and I still am up there all the time.
Was your family musical at all? Like,
totally, yeah,
okay,
big time.
In what capacity?
Mostly in singing. Like the five of us, my two older sisters and my parents and I, we would sing every once in a while in places. So if you need something, if you ever need five people to just stand in the corner and sing some amazing songs, just call the Swineharts. Gotcha. We got you. Yeah. Did they play so a lot of choir stuff?
Okay.
And my mom played a little bit of piano in the house. But I chose music because my two older sisters had kind of chosen their corners as well. My oldest sister is just the most amazing athlete you've ever seen in your life. She's like 7 feet shorter than me. She could still beat me at basketball. And my middle sister, Jen, she was in ballet. She was like so into ballet that she went to half days at school and then would do ballet the rest of the day. Like she was on kind of the fast track to San Francisco ballet kind of stuff. But because of the social scenario that was happening at ballet, she was just kind of like, I just want to be with my friends. I'm going to stop this and go to full-time high school and just, be a high schooler. So she stopped doing that. But kind of in those years where it was like sports and ballet, I'd be curious to hear your take on this, actually, because I feel like our siblings really kind of shape what corner we pick as like our thing,
100%.
That's my theory a little bit, that my sisters, they kind of had their thing. And so I picked my thing. But the truth is, when I was in kindergarten, my mom took me to not the record store, the music store down the road from our house. And said, "Do you guys teach music here?" And they said, "Yeah, we teach, guitar, bass, drums, keyboards." And so he said, what kind of lessons are you looking for? My mom, I remember in the store, kind of turned to me and said, "What do you want to play?" And I was like, "I don't know, I guess drums." And she said, "Okay, drums." And he said, "Great, we have a drum teacher. Unfortunately, the youngest he will teach is second graders." So he's like, "Come back in 2 years and Greg can get drum lessons." And so so we went back, and got those drum lessons when I was in second grade. And they said, "Oh, we have a different drum teacher now. He would teach a kindergartner now." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so behind." I'm like 7 years old.
I'll never become Phil Collins.
Yeah, totally. But it's been really interesting kind of looking back on what I've used drums and music for throughout my life. I feel like there's been like 4 or 5 different chapters of my life where I've used it in different ways.
Interesting.
At first it was almost like piano lessons. It was almost like, I remember my first reaction to getting drum lessons in second grade was, "Oh no, I now have homework before I even have homework at school. This was a mistake." Then in middle school, I was like in the jazz band and doing drum solos and stuff, and it was kind of nice to have a thing. And then when we moved to Bellingham, I stopped taking drum lessons and I stopped kind of drumming at school. And I was kind of like, I think I'm done. I think we had a good run there. I'm 15 now. I think I'm going to stop. And then I took about a year off, maybe almost a year. And then I set up my drums in the basement of the house we had. And really kind of felt like a certain amount of freedom. Like, oh, I can just do whatever I want on drums now. It's not homework,
Yeah.
And then I grew up listening to a lot of jazz trio stuff.
Okay.
And there was a jazz pianist at my high school that led the choir. And there was like a jazz choir there. And while I didn't love a jazz choir at all, the teacher was a jazz pianist. And so he was like, "Hey, you could be in this jazz trio with me and this bass player." And it was just the greatest. His name was Dale Matson, and he was the choir teacher at Home High School. He's the guy who taught the Posies how to sing. Do you know that band, the Posies?
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, it was like, oh my gosh, there are these guys who graduated, from this high school, taught by this singer. I mean, by this choir teacher, and now they're signed to Geffen Records. So that kind of got me back into drumming. Yeah, so that's kind of how I grew up with music, and then I used it, in the band. I used it in all kinds of different ways. I used it not because I wanted to be in a band, but because I wanted to eventually be like a manager of bands and maybe start a label and, just kind of like, well, but I'm a drummer in, this band. So I'll do that while I'm figuring out this other thing. I don't know. It felt like an on-ramp to all kinds of different things in my life. So I feel like we all kind of do that with whatever we have,
Sure. Yeah.
Hopefully it's an on-ramp to relationships.
What is a song that you remember hearing for the first time and being like, this grips me in a way that I've never connected with a song like that before in either an emotional way, spiritual type of way?
So the first song I ever heard that floored me, my uncle played it for me.
Wow.
I was like 3 or 4 years old. And he was in the band in the Army. And he was he took over for, do you know the country singer George Strait?
It sounds really familiar. Yeah.
He's like old school country.
Okay.
He was in this Army country band, and he left, and my uncle became the singer in the Army country band. So my uncle is like incredible voice, incredible guitar player. And so when I was a little kid, he sat down with an acoustic guitar and he played "On the Road Again" by Willie Nelson. Now, I'd never heard someone sing a song in front of me, I don't think, ever.
Yeah.
And I was just floored by it. And so I was like, he finished, and I was like, "Can you do that again?" He goes, "Yeah." And he like sings it again. And I think I asked, when he finished, I was like, can we do it again? Like, this has to be what happens for the rest of my life, is just you singing the song in front of me. It was the best thing that's ever happened. And he was kind of like, "No, I mean, I feel like 2 is pretty good." But I mean, whatever, that like planted a seed for sure. Like, oh my gosh, whatever that was, I need to get back to that as soon as possible for the rest of my life. So
that's a core memory, right? And it's
100%.
There's so many people who don't, or like even myself, struggle to remember anything at 3 years old, and so
like I just said that out loud, and I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like, it is such a core memory for me. And my Uncle Mike is like the greatest person in history. And he had a great voice. He was an amazing guitar player. He is a great guitar player. So yeah, I just am so thankful to him. It was so, so funny. Like when the Pale started releasing records, I gave him the album and I was like, I know you're going to hate this, but I have to give this to you because this is partially your fault that I'm doing this. But like, I don't know. I was thinking about Jeff Buckley the other day and him singing that Leonard Cohen song, Hallelujah, the most overly, covered song in history. It's embarrassing how many people have covered it.
But Jeff's
really, what's hilarious is he didn't know the Leonard Cohen version. He knew the John Cale version, the guy from the Velvet Underground. And so, but that version, when he's just showing what he can do with it, and he hits that long falsetto note at the end that just goes like forever. That falsetto note, during that falsetto note, every time I listen to this song, I get the chills like on my arms, on the back of my neck, at the very least. I mean, that song can kind of like just like start making me like cry, you know. So I'm pretty sure I'm a highly sensitive person, by the way. As well. I don't know if you are, but I'm fairly certain that I am. Yeah. So music like that song, like that moment in that song just gets me every single time.
Yeah. So like, okay, so you get into Western, you meet Gabe at Wacom. Yeah. What year is this?
Yeah, it was like 94, 95, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And we met because his brother's girlfriend said, you must know Gabe. Like when I was talking, she was like, the way you're talking and the bands you're talking about, like your sense of humor, you know Gabe, right? I was like, no, I don't know who you're talking about. She's like, it's my boyfriend's brother. You got to meet him. And so she introduced us, and now she's married to his brother. They've been married forever. So Gabe and I met, and I mean, we just kind of did that. I've heard it described as like that awkward dance when like you meet somebody new, and you're like, I don't know, are we going to be friends? How do we do this? You know, what are the next steps here? And he told me, I've been in a band with my cousin for the last couple of years, and his cousin Cam was out of town, and so he was just like, I'm just kind of hanging out. I've got they had like 18, 20 demos like that they recorded on a 4-track or 6-track at their house. And so we just started talking about music. And then he said, do you want to come over and like just record something for fun? And so in his parents' attic, they had, just like everything set up. And so we messed around recording a song, and he's just one of those guys that's like really inviting, you know, really inclusive. And so he just was like, come meet my other friends, and so then, so I don't want to jump ahead, but like,
no.
That's kind of, so we just kind of got to know each other. We started going to movies. I don't know if we went to any shows. But at that point, I'd been going to a million shows in like garages in Bellingham or at Western. There were a lot of great shows that came through. There were like random shows at like, Bellingham Parks or like the pool. I mean, there's like really bizarre places where, even like sub pop bands would come up and just be like, I don't know, where do we set up?
Right. Yeah.
And
but that was kind of like the scene though, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, in New Jersey, it was like VFW halls, right? Like things were
right, totally,
people's houses, basement shows,
In Bellingham, it was like there was like an art gallery in Fairhaven where a bunch of shows happened. But it was always like the singer was singing through the bass player's amp, as well as the bass was coming out of that amp as well. It was stuff like that, And those are the best shows I've ever been to in my life, There's really no artifice to it. It's like this is either great or it's horrible,
Yeah.
And there's just something about bands being in the living room of a house, and even if their songs aren't great, the fact that they're playing it right in front of you is pretty amazing.
The way that I got introduced to the Pale was specifically because Gabe was playing on the worship team at Hillcrest, and my brother was like one of the worship leaders there. Because he said, this is Gabe, and Gabe plays in a band and called The Pale. And
Hmm.
I was like, and I was really into
Mhm.
the scene at that time, like just in general. When I found out that Gabe was in a band and the band was called The Pale, and I think you guys might have been signed to Sideshow, but
Mhm.
somehow Copeland came up, and I was a massive freaking fan of Copeland.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh my god, this guy plays and with like all these other, like it was like, oh, like I just like worshipped people like that. And so that's how I was introduced to Gabe, and
What a weird coincidence.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
incredibly weird.
So I met Gabe, and he was in this band called The Pale with his cousin
Cameron,
Cam.
yeah,
And I mean, initially the band was Gabe on piano and Cam on drums, and they were a two-piece. And then eventually, um, Gabe kind of switched over to guitar, and they asked a friend Ben Parsons to play bass, and so they were kind of a three-piece. Ben eventually left, and then their cousin Seth Carey, and so it was like three different cousins were the band, and it was just kind of like a cool thing that they were doing, and they kept like writing and recording songs the way that we all should be doing this, by the way. Everybody that's listening to this, you and I should both be writing and demoing songs every single day.
yeah,
I mean, that's what we should all be doing. And like 10% of them will be keepers for the album,
yeah.
this is what should all be doing every day. Um, so I'm living in Bellingham. I'm best friends with this guy named Joe Sky Tucker that I work with at Baskin Robbins Ice Cream on Holly
Nice.
Street. And Joe Sky Tucker is the guy that I do a podcast with called Great Bad Movies.
Yeah.
And we were best friends, and we were looking for a place together to move out of our parents' house and into an apartment. We moved onto Garden Street, but we couldn't find like a 2-bedroom that we could afford, but a 3-bedroom seemed like something we could swing. And Gabe's cousin Cam was coming back to town and was looking for a place to stay. So I'd never really met Cam, but Cam, Joe Sky Tucker, and I got a place. That was the first place I ever had outside of my parents' house. And so I now have this podcast kind of reconnecting with my best friend back then, Joe Sky Tucker. We lost touch for a long time. And so I've been thinking about that kind of era of my life quite a bit. But this is when I met Cam, and they weren't playing shows, but for some reason they were going to play a show and they needed a drummer. And so I drummed for them. Cam played bass, I guess. Maybe. I'm not sure what Cam did. I think Cam played bass. He moved from drums to bass so that I could play this show. And we played a show to raise money for something. I can't remember what. And that was the first time I played with them. And then I don't remember when we really started playing together. I think Cam was out of town again. And I had some friends taking a class at Fairhaven College where there was a recording studio.
Yeah.
And so I called Gabe and said, do you have a song that you would want to record? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so he and I tracked a song in Fairhaven Studios. And then we had this song that we really liked. And Cam came back to town. They kept recording songs. They eventually put together enough songs for real to put out an actual album. And so I drummed with them at that. And they opened for the other band that I was in with my friend Lance. And so, just kind of in a bunch of bands in Bellingham. And then I was in these two bands, The Pale, and I was playing with my friend Lance, with my other friends, Mike and Todd. And it was really bizarre. Like my room in college had 2 boxes of 2 different, records for sale.
Right.
And so people would just come to my room and be like, hey, can I buy your album? And I'd be like, which one? And people seemed to be buying The Pale more than they were buying Lance's record. And
which Pale album was that?
It's not available anywhere now. It was called First Attempt at World Domination.
Okay. Was that the one with the kid with the...
Yeah, that was Gabe.
With the cape. Totally. Okay, yeah.
And at some point, we kind of retired that album. And then when streaming came along, we're like, we're not going to put this one on streaming. I mean, because it really was like demos, essentially, and so we played enough shows to sell like a few thousand copies of that record.
Wow.
And then
mostly in Bellingham?
We all finished up with college. Yeah, mostly in Bellingham. Yeah, in kind of like surrounding areas, but we never played Seattle.
Yeah.
Those guys had deep roots in Shelton, which is kind of down
Yeah.
by Olympia. So we headed down there every once in a while. But like no connection to Seattle really at all. Mostly just kind of like Whatcom and Skagit County.
Yeah.
So yeah, we sold like a couple thousand. I think I want to say at the end we sold over 3,000 copies of the record. Which when you're selling it at like the merch table at the back of we were like
3,000 copies. That's pretty dang good.
So then we slowly recorded a second album, so slowly that I think people forgot we were a band. There's a chance we forgot we were a band, to be honest. And there was this band called Late Tuesday.
Yep, I remember them.
In Bellingham. Tara Ward, Dana Little, Caitlin Evanson, Jocelyn Meyer was her name back then, I think. And so they were putting out their first album, and their crowd was kind of our old crowd. And so we asked them, like, can we open for you at your city release party? And Tara Ward was like, don't take this the wrong way, but I didn't even know you guys were still playing. Like I hadn't thought of you guys in a while. I was like, we hadn't either, to be frank. So once Late Tuesday was up and running and playing shows, and we started playing shows together, we were like, hey, this is pretty great. We should finish up that album. And this is when Nate Beatty and a guy named Ryan Worsley joined. And Ryan was a friend of Nate's from Canada. So Ryan would drive down from BC to play with us. We all lived in Bellingham. And so we finished up a second record. And also, I mean, for a band that was really just selling these out of, one record store in Seattle, one record store in Bellingham and our van, I think we sold like 3,500 copies of that record.
Wow. What was the name of the record again?
That one was called Another Innovative Idea for the People on the Go.
Jeez,
and it took us 18 years to record. Not really. It was like, I don't know, a year or two. And that record sounds like a band kind of like growing up a little bit. We were kind of like this old pop band, and now we're like a little bit more thoughtful, maybe a little bit moodier. The best songs on there are the moody ones. Very like Cure.
Honestly, my favorite, I will still listen to it to this day, is the second track. I was just looking up what the name of it was. The second track on there is Just Everything
Really?
I Am. Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's a fantastic song. It doesn't, for some reason to me, it doesn't seem to fit all the other songs on the album, but like, it's an incredibly like marketable song.
Huh. We were trying to grow up. I think I was pretty influenced by Radiohead with the drum beat on there, at least in some parts of it. Trying to be like, not just a simple pop band. My favorite song on there is the third one, All You Needed to Say, which for the people who have, everyone listening to this has no idea who this band was. We eventually changed our name to the Pale Pacific. You can listen to stuff on streaming under the Pale Pacific. So that album was doing pretty well as far as I'd worked at KUGS at Western, the radio station.
Yeah.
And so I was familiar with like CMJ magazine and I was familiar with like the college music charts.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like at that time, it was like the underground kind of like, if you're charting in college music, that meant larger radio stations might pay attention to you. And at that time, that was a big deal. It's like pre-streaming. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to pick, I don't remember how many states I picked, but I picked like a handful of Western states that I thought we could drive to. And I found all the college stations in those states, and I sent our record out to those stations, and we started charting in CMJ magazine. Wow. It was so bizarre to see our name and our album.
Yeah.
But like people who worked at these radio stations that were like the radio station I worked at Western, were accepting it, putting it in rotation, and then the DJs were playing it. So it was like, this is a great sign. And that was one of the songs that the one that you're talking about, Is This Everything I Am, that got played. So then I started calling them the way that, like major labels would call me when I worked at the college radio station, just randomly saying, what do you think of the song? What do you think of this album? Which one do you like the most? This is kind of like how labels would figure out what people were listening to and what they liked back then versus like what's getting played on Spotify now. So then pretty quickly after we put that out in like August. The following June, we were recording our next album. So like over that winter, I was still like full in like promoting this album, trying to get it out there, trying to like figure out how we could like tour down the West Coast to these, colleges or whatever. And the guys in the band were like, what if we just like started recording some of our new songs? And I was like, it's not time. We still got to, I'm still promoting this thing. Like, but they're really old now. These songs are like 2 or 3 years old. Let's start recording these new songs. And Nate Beatty was one of the people who was really driving this forward. And it was like, all right, let's start demoing these songs in our practice space. This is such a great time in our lives because we had this practice space on Holly Street. Mm. We shared it with Late Tuesday. And they were like our sister band. And Cam comes from a family that records. He actually grew up with like massive 8-track 2-inch tape kind of machines around him. And so he was just like, I'm just going to start recording our band out of our practice space. And so we started demoing songs for our third record, which if you're a musician, if you hear one thing I say, it's that you don't know how good your song is until you've actually tracked it and you're sitting there listening to it. I didn't realize how long and boring our songs were until I actually had to sit through them like a song listener. And so we would record these songs and be like, I mean, it's good, but it's not like 5.5 minutes good. We need to trim this down. And so then we started kind of growing this muscle of let's start kind of trimming this down to the actual like good parts, and see if we can make a real song out of this. And so we recorded this song called Gravity Gets Things Done our initial plan was let's record an EP. And then we realized, okay, these are demos. We're not going to release this EP. We need to re-record all these songs, but maybe let's make six out of 6 great songs. Like when you listen to an album, sometimes it's like there are 2 or 3 good songs.
Yeah.
This was going to be like the most bulletproof EP of 6 songs, we thought. And then we got those 6 songs down into something great. And then we were like, well, we could add 4 more and make this an album. So that's what we did. But Gravity Gets Things Done was a song that we wrote that eventually, people kind of got into in the Northwest. And it was like a 5.5-minute song.
Yeah, it's a good song. Yeah.
It had a bridge that we eventually cut. And we got it down to 4 minutes, which there was kind of one thing is, if you're going to be a song longer than 4 minutes, you really have to be absolutely positive that your song is worth more than 4 minutes. You guys have some pretty long ones on your on the final EP. Or was it the final album? Yeah. There are some longer songs. There was a thing back then though that, and I still had like radio play in mind because this is like, again, this is before Spotify playlists and whatever. You couldn't get played on commercial radio if your song was over 4 minutes.
Okay.
And if your song was over 4 minutes, the label would do a 4-minute kind of truncated version. And then that would be your single mix.
Yeah.
So I was like, I feel like people really like this Gravity Gets Things Done song. Let's see if we can make a 4-minute version of it. And that actually made us like trim the fat. So like the intro is half as long. We cut the bridge, we didn't waste everybody's time with this thing that we thought was great. And so we had this demo EP and I started sending those to labels in the area that we wanted to be a part of.
Who were some of them?
Sub Pop. My goal was for us to be on Sub Pop. If there's another thing that you hear, if you're listening to this and you're a musician, it's that there's no such thing as a bad goal. What I learned from this period of my life is like, we could not get Sub Pop to even think about us, let alone listen to anything. But the fact that we had that North Star goal of like, we are working towards, we're going to be on Sub Pop Records. Good things are going to happen if you have a goal that's unattainable, you know?
Yeah.
And so like we did eventually have a record deal. We did eventually have, you know, distribution to record stores, which was a big thing back then. We did, you know, get like a booking agent and whatever, but we never got, I mean, none of those people were the people we were going for.
Sure.
But the fact that we had the goal of getting there, you know, we were very happy with, you know, who we ended up being with. So my goal was to be on Sub Pop. I sent our second record, another innovative idea for the people on the go, to Sub Pop. Never heard back. Sent these demos. How did this work? No, actually, okay, this is a crazy story. You'll like this story. My friend, James Tweedy, who worked at Vagrant Records, was also in a band called Sunday's Best on Polyvinyl. And they were in town. He lived in LA, but he was in town playing with Minus the Bear on tour. And so it was an awesome night. Went to the Paradox. You remember the Paradox Theater in Seattle? Did you ever go to? You probably weren't here for that.
No, I don't. It
was like an all ages venue in the U District. Really good little theater to see bands. You know, at an all ages venue. It was kind of like one of the Vera projects that we had back then. So I go there, like I'm with his mom and his dad. I'm watching him play. It's amazing. And we go out to dinner afterwards. And a guy named Tony, who was and probably is A&R at Sub Pop, was at dinner.
Oh, really?
And because he and James were friends because James worked at Vagrant. And so I was talking to him. I was like, wait, you're Tony from Sub Pop? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, can I give you some demos of my band? He goes, yeah, man, do it. Like, we've been talking for a while. Like, we were normal people, you know? It wasn't like I was like totally, I don't know, what do people call people who are super hungry and thirsty for climbers? You know? Like, I was like a normal person. So I was like, can I give you my demos? He's like, yeah, sure. And so I handed it to him and he looks at it and then he looks at me and goes, why do I feel like I've heard your band? I was like, I don't think you have. And he goes, did you maybe send me something that was orange at some point? And our second album had mostly orange.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, our last album was that. And he goes, okay, let me tell you a story. I don't remember who she was. I wish I knew her name. I think she like answered the phones and she was like the receptionist at Sub Pop. He said she was like the nicest person. She was the only person in the office that actually had a heart towards all of the musicians on the planet. And she herself would listen to every demo that came into Sub Pop. No one else there would. And occasionally, when she heard something that she really thought her bosses should hear, she would insist that they listen to it, but only occasionally. But he said that she like really emphatically said, you need to listen to this one with that album. And he was like, I don't think I ever listened to it, but it made an impression to me that she really wanted me to listen to this orange one. Like, I recognized the name, so that's something. And I was just like dying laughing. I was like, this is amazing. I can't believe, please thank her for me. So we started sending that around. And if there's a third thing anybody listening to this hears, I never heard anything back from anyone I sent these demos out to.
Really?
Nothing. Nothing at all.
It's like job resumes today.
It's like an actor doing, 300 auditions. It's like job resumes. Yeah. It's like, you just have to understand that, I don't know, you're not going to hear back from people. But if you do it long enough, people will then say, when you send them the next thing that they like, they'll be like, oh yeah, I listened to your last thing and was interested, but never got back to you. And so when we actually recorded our album, Gravity Gets Things Done, which was 10 songs in its kind of first incarnation, when we started sending that out, people were aware of who we were because of all the stuff I'd done for like the 2 years before, sending out stuff and whatever. Yeah. And so it was like there was an awareness of us in the area, and people had there was at least name recognition, and maybe they kind of listened to 30 seconds of something and it was like, oh, that's not horrible, And so then when I sent them something that they actually kind of liked, it was like, okay. And everybody started getting back to me right when that came out.
Interesting.
we were kind of putting that out on my label. So we put out Gravity Gets Things Done as an album in our area. We invite Delure and the Prom from Seattle up to Bellingham for a show. And I don't know, we were really just trying to reach out to other bands that we thought we fit with back then. And eventually that album kind of broke through in like the Seattle area, So nothing huge, but kind of like amongst our friends and our peers and kind of
Sure.
like the local area. It was kind of like a good experience for us to put out some songs that people were into.
So how did you end up getting Gravity Gets Things Done? Is that released on just your guys's
Yeah,
it's
it
not
my
really
label.
Yeah, okay.
It was all, I quit my job. I got out of debt from college. I quit my job.
Nice.
And decided I work for this band full time. And my goal actually after graduating from Western was to go to grad school to become a therapist.
Oh, interesting.
And I took a break to see if this band thing would work because I was going to regret it if I didn't. And so it was like my gap year,
Yeah.
But in that gap year and a half, I guess, it probably took me a little while to get out of debt from school. I was paying for it all myself. And so I was working throughout. So I got out of debt. I got out of debt from school faster than I bet people do now. But once I was out of debt, I quit my job and just decided I work for this band. So I turned my room at my house with my roommate into the home base, and I learned how to graphic design. And I was making show posters, and I was designing albums. Cam's wife Ruthie totally helped us out, basically designed the second album as well, because she knew how to use design programs. And gosh, I'm totally getting off the rails here. And so I just decided I'm going to quit my job and do this band until it's just unfeasible. And eventually, I wasn't the one booking the band, someone else was. I wasn't the one managing the band, somebody else was. I wasn't the one with the label. We were signed to a different label, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I remember being embarrassed talking to my mom saying like, I should have gone to grad school. I don't know what I'm doing now. And she's like, are you kidding me? You're in grad school right now.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't know what a booking agent was. You didn't know what a label was. You didn't want to know what a manager was. You didn't know what record distribution was. You didn't know what radio promotion was. You decided you were doing all of those jobs, and you're handing off all those jobs to other people now. And so,
was that hard for you to do at some point? Like, you're sort of giving up control of a lot of things that you have control of.
No, it wasn't. I was so thankful when somebody who really knew what they were doing was doing it.
How did you guys end up on Sideshow? James
Cho worked at Tooth and Nail for a little while, and so he knew people up here. He lived in LA. And he had kind of like family connections up here. So he was up here. I think he might have heard us on the radio. We had this really bizarre thing happen in Seattle.
Okay.
Where kind of from the kind of the college radio stuff, I decided I'm going to try and get us on KEXP.
Okay.
In Seattle. I had moved to Seattle at this point to try and promote the band. And all the other guys were like up in Bellingham. And we got on KEXP, and John Richards at the time, the DJ at KEXP, he was also doing the local show at KNDD at the end, 107.7. And so he said, hey, can I get a copy of your record? I want to play it on the local show at the end. And so I drove a couple copies to him, and then the response was pretty good. And so then he started playing us on KEXP and other people at KEXP, Cheryl Waters, Kevin Cole, a bunch of people there, just like the greatest. Oh my gosh, the greatest people were KEXP in Seattle. They're so great. They started playing us as well. And so we were getting played And then the end decided we're going to pick a couple local bands and put them in regular rotation. And so they were playing us, The Divorce, Delure. I think there were a couple other bands that they started putting in regular rotation. And then once you're in rotation at the end, people start calling in requesting you. And there was this show at the end of the night where they would play the most requested songs from the day. And we started becoming one of the most requested songs at the end. And so there was a week where we were the number one most requested song at the end. And we were we charted number 2 at KEXP.
Wow.
Behind the rapper Common, which is
That's
exactly
crazy.
the right order there.
Yeah.
Common should be number 1. Like when I heard we were number 2, I was like, wait, who's number 1? And they said Common. I was like, okay, I'm fine.
I'm good.
That's totally fine.
I'm good. Yeah.
I love Common.
Was it the song Gravity Gets Things Done?
Yeah, that was the song that was getting played the most. So we're getting played on this kind of indie station in Seattle, and we're getting played on this super corporate radio station, like with Nickelback and and then like the early 90s grunge bands they were playing and whoever else. And so I think it was in that time when we were getting that radio play that James heard us.
Okay. Did you have any interest from Tooth and Nail?
We did talk to Tooth and Nail, and Brandon Ebel came to see us play at the Crocodile one time when we played, and other kind of Tooth and Nail luminary bands were there at that show as well, and they were kind of all having like we've known each other from way back. This is fun. We're at this show together, and so it was kind of cool to see them come to the show and say hi to them.
I had this. You guys had to change your name.
We did, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well,
do you think because you guys had some pretty good momentum going at that point?
So yeah, we were on the end. We were on KEXP, and then there was a station called Star 101.5, which was like the Matchbox 20 and John Mayer station in town. Also, like a corporately owned. It was called AAA Radio. It was like Soccer Mom Rock. They called me and said, hey, we've heard you on KEXP in the end. Could we play you on our station? And I was like, why on earth would you ask me? Yeah. They said, well, this just shows you how kind people are on this planet. I was emailing with them and they said, well, we just know that if we start playing you, stations like the end and KEXP might stop playing you. So we just wanted to ask ahead of time since you guys are kind of like just starting out. Oh my gosh, that has to be like the most thoughtful kind thing a person could possibly do.
Yeah, I don't think you've.
And these are people with like just trying to make money and so the fact that I got this email, I was just like, this gives me hope in this world. So I emailed KEXP in the end, and KEXP was like, yeah, whatever. In the end said, okay, here's the deal. Like they took it very seriously because they were both like corporately owned, radio stations. And they said, okay, we would still play you if that station plays you. But if you play an event for Star 101.5, we will no longer play you. And so I said, does that mean we should play your event? And they said, yes. Do you guys want to play Endfest at the Gorge in Washington?
Whoa.
And I was like, absolutely. And I think we had already signed on to play Sasquatch at the Gorge that summer. So we played Sasquatch and Endfest, which were 2.
These are big things,
I know.
Craig.
And I'm just like using my friend's, computer to do these emails. My roommate's computer. And we're not a band that has a label. We're on my label, which was named after a Steve Martin joke. And it was called Always Never Records. And you should listen to Let's Get Small, the album by Steve Martin, if you want to get that reference. So we played on a stage, the same stage that Brandi Carlile and Damian Rice played at Sasquatch that year. you should know that it was like outside of the front gate, I think. Might have been inside the front gate. It was like the very small third stage at Sasquatch,
Sure.
but still an amazing experience. And then we played Enfest, and they were two completely different worlds. And this is why I asked you like who you thought we fit with, because we would hear us getting played alongside like Common, Page of the Lion, Jurassic 5. Um, who else was getting played at that time? Like local bands like the Long Winters or whatever, on KEXP. And then we would get played between like Nickelback maybe on the end. Was Nickelback being played on the end, and like Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam on the end. And then we would get played
Huh.
between John Mayer and Matchbox 20 on Star 101.5. And I would hear us on these radio stations. And I'd be like, you know what? Gravity Gets Things Done as a song kind of fits in all three of these worlds. Like it's not out of
Yeah.
place. And once
Sure.
we started
Yeah,
getting played
yeah,
on
yeah.
those three radio stations in Seattle, everybody on the planet started calling my cell phone and emailing us through our website. So like there was a day where we got contacted by three different branches of Atlantic Records. And the three of them didn't know
Crazy.
none of them knew that the other branches had reached out to us. It was
Oh,
like they had
interesting.
independently found out about us and were reaching out to us for different reasons. And so I started sending our record out to every major label on the planet. And I started getting the funniest phone calls from people trying to just like, I don't know what they were doing. They were trying to get free records in the mail. They were like throwing around their weight, like, hey, let's make a deal. And so I started doing this thing when record labels would call me. It's like, yeah, let's make a deal right now. What's your offer? They're like, whoa, well, I'm not I can't, I'm like, no, you're calling right now. Let's do it right now. Let's make the
Yeah.
let's
What
make
you
the deal right
got?
now.
What
Like,
you
well, I
got?
can't. My subway's here. I got to go click. But I mean, it was such a fun time because just everybody was calling. It was very fun. But we decided we don't want to sign to a major label because all of the bands we liked and respected kind of did it on their own until they could really kind of sign to a major label on their own terms. And so we decided if we sign to a major label, if we sign to a big kind of deal, it'll be because we've deserved it. And we never got to that point. So
Why? Like, when did things start winding down? Because you guys had to you had to change your name, right?
we did. There was a band. Well, there was a band called. Here's what happened. Some guys in Texas had just graduated from law school. They had bought like whatever it is, like the trademark or whatever for the band name Pale, Pale. And the fact that we had the in front of it didn't matter. Just the name Pale was
Oh,
the thing.
really?
And so they sent us a cease and desist order that we got like the day before we went on our second national tour. And we were being booked by like real people at this point, and we were playing real venues, and we were being distributed nationally um, through. And so we had like a barcode on the back of our album that was being scanned everywhere through this company called SoundScan that tracks all that. And so we kind of decided to ignore it until the end of the tour, just because we didn't know what to do.
Right. You're not going to change
No,
them
but we also
until
talked
you
to a
don't.
lawyer and said, "What do you think we should do?" And the lawyer said, uh, "You are the only ones with this band name that have had records released and are selling nationally and internationally, and you have press." Like at that point, we had been in Rolling Stone, we had been in Spin, we had been in a lot of like publications. Like he said, "You win this lawsuit every day of the week. So if they ever sue you, I've got your back.
Okay.
You're going to win this." Um, but this lawyer, he's like, "I just typed your name into like the international like registry of company names or whatever, copyright names, and there's a band in Ireland called The Pale, exact same spelling, and they were signed to A&M Records over there. So you can't get the international rights to this name. So if you were to change your name, or if you felt like changing your name and getting the international like copyright or whatever it is to this name, you know, maybe it's time. Let me know if that sounds interesting to you. And at that point, we were like, yeah, we want to start, touring everywhere and selling records everywhere. So let's figure out a name that we like that we could get the international rights to. And so we decided to change it to the Pale Pacific for that reason.
Do you think you guys did that have any effect on your momentum
Probably.
at
I mean,
all?
think about a rebrand, it's a bummer.
Right.
I'm sure there are people out there who are like, whatever happened to the Pale? Because when we were on the radio here in town, it was all
Well,
the Pale.
yeah.
So yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, when did things start winding down? I remember your guys' farewell show. You did it with the Lonely Forest, I think, and at the Crocodile, I think.
I think that was
Yeah,
our
I'm pretty
live
sure.
album recording. I don't think we ever
Yeah,
did
yeah, it
a
was.
farewell show. I don't think so.
Really? I could have sworn that was like the last show that you guys were playing.
I mean, it kind of was. So I don't think the memory is wrong. But it was what we decided to do was we were no longer going to tour. We were just going to downshift to a local band. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys downshift to a local band, or did you just stop?
Well, here's what
playing?
happened. Okay, so we had released our record Urgency, and we had toured a bit for that. We were about to go on our we went on a South by Southwest tour for like 3 weeks with United States of Electronica, our friends. And it was just the greatest time in history. And I was about to get married, and I just kind of decided, you know what? I want to keep managing this band, and I want to start managing other bands. And it's really hard to do it from the van. And so
Sure.
I wonder if I could keep doing that and keep like playing that role of like setting that North Star for the band. Like, here's what I think we should do next. And then kind of fighting for that against, the universe. And, but I don't think I can be the drummer in the band anymore. And so I told the guys, hey, I'm thinking it's probably time for me to be done drumming in the band, but like everything in me still wants to fight for the band. So I kind of want to like manage it from home, but I don't think I'm the drummer anymore. And I don't know when it makes sense for you guys to find a new drummer or for me to leave. So I'm not saying right now. I might be saying in 6 months. I might be saying in a year. I have no idea, but I'm just starting the conversation.
Yeah.
And so we decided, all right, well, let's meet in like 2 weeks. We were at Mallard's Ice Cream in Bellingham, actually. We were playing a show in Bellingham.
Nice.
And so we decided to meet at Mallard's and before the show and talk about it. And at the meeting, Gabe said, you know what? I don't really feel like touring anymore either. And so I immediately went, great, we're a local band. I'm back in. And so
Nice.
and so we kind of downshifted to a local band. And this is kind of the biggest thing that I think is important for people who are playing music to know is life is better when you're playing music. And I heard this interview with Steve Albini, the producer who produced like, In Utero by Nirvana, a gazillion other bands. He was like, I don't understand why people start playing music and in their garage they go, we're going to start playing stadiums. What if life was just good when you play music? He's like, nobody starts playing tennis and then they say, I'm going to win Wimbledon, And so he was like, life is just better when you're playing tennis with your friends, and life is also better when you're just playing music with your friends. So why don't you just play music? And so we kind of just downshifted into a local band and decided life was better when we were playing music together.
Did you go on? I mean, you were obviously you played with Rose Blossom Punch. On like, were you play? Did you continue to play with other bands in the Seattle area at all? Or, I mean, how did you even get hooked up with Aaron sprinkle and help
Um,
playing that show.
well, yeah. So you and I ran into each other at the Poor Lou Rose Blossom Punch Prayer Chain show at the Showbox. Um, I Gosh, well, Aaron recorded Late Tuesday's second record at the studio where
Oh,
he
okay.
recorded all of those Tooth and Nail bands, and so I think I'm sure I met him before that, but we hung out there because I was just kind of around. And then I think I played. Do you remember his band Fair? I think I played
Yep.
Fair's last show because Joey, their
Oh,
drummer, was out
okay.
of town. I don't think they knew it was their last show, but I filled in for Joey, who is 8 times the drummer that I am, and played with them then. And then when Nick and Eric from Fair started Subways on the Sun,
Mhm.
and they released records with John from Tooth and Nail, who was the marketing guy when I talked to Tooth and Nail. Um, I played in Subways on the Sun for a while, for like a couple years. And so then I was just hanging out with Eric and Nick said, "Hey, Pearl Lou's playing a reunion show." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'll be there." And he goes, "Do you want to play with Rose Blossom Punch opening?" It's like, "Yes." Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I totally had that record in the 90s. Let's do this.
I mean, how did you even get to play for Fair though?
I really don't know. I don't remember.
You're
I mean,
just there.
well,
Poof, you're
Eric's
behind the drum
band
kit.
back then and the Pale played together, and I knew Nick. I don't know, just I don't know. When you meet nice people, you just kind of want to be around them, and all of those guys are just the nicest
Yeah.
people. And so I don't know.
Why did you want to go into counseling? What that came out of left field. Like, why were you thinking about going into counseling?
Well, I think it came. I remember junior year of high school, and this is like the most junior year of high school thing anyone has ever thought. I really wanted to help people.
Sure.
And when you're 17, that obviously means you're going to be a therapist. There's no other route to helping people. And so that's just kind of, but I also really enjoyed talking to people and like listening and hearing how they are and connecting with them. And so I just always assumed that once I was done at Western, I majored in communication and psychology, that I would then go on to grad school and become a therapist. And then I decided to take a break in between undergrad and grad school because I would regret if I didn't try out,
Of course, yeah.
taking what was happening in coffee shops in Bellingham with the Pale and
Yeah.
like trying to go other places. And so then that ended up being this like 3 or 4 year kind of scenario where we were in a van and touring around and, really kind of living the dream. So once that was done, I had kind of realized that trying to help people doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become a therapist. You could honestly do that no matter where you are. And I actually
Sure.
learned that on tour. We toured with a bunch of bands, and sometimes we would be with them for like 4 or 5 weeks. And I realized that helping people can mean just walking alongside them. And the people that I really wanted to help in the world probably weren't going to go see a therapist.
Sure.
And so, kind of touring with other bands and seeing what other people were using tour for was really interesting to me. Like, we as a band, we all felt very rooted in our relationships here in Seattle. And so when we were going out and, driving around in a van for sometimes 8 weeks at a time, we definitely felt like our roots and our relationships were here. But we noticed that people we were on tour with, they were like escaping by being on tour.
Mm.
They were like, we were running towards, being a band and being out there. Other bands we toured with, they were definitely running away from their home. And so there was like almost like this like shadow mission while being on tour that we got to walk alongside some people and be there for them. And it made me realize I don't have to be a therapist to be there for people. I'll be walking alongside people no matter what career I choose.
Yeah.
And so I don't need to be a therapist. And so because I had been graphic designing and just kind of like a general creative for the band, my thought was I would leave the band and start a management company and start managing bands. And what ended up happening was my wife and I started a design company out of our house, and that's still what I'm doing. So that's just kind of how it, shook out for me. What's hilarious is, so I went to school for, communication and psychology. My plan was to become a therapist. I became a graphic designer. My wife went to school for graphic design and is now a therapist. So, what was hilarious when she was going to grad school to become a therapist, she would get home and I'd be like, what did we learn today? Like, tell me all about it. And there was a day that she got home, she's like, I'm pretty sure you're more interested in what I'm studying than I am. So anyways, so I feel like, just kind of the life mission of like walking alongside people and helping them can happen no matter who you are, and no matter what you're doing. So I don't need to be a therapist to do that.
Yeah. So like, what was your concept of therapy at that?
That's what I'm saying. Like as a 17-year-old, just like, I don't know, therapist?
Yeah.
I didn't go to a therapist until we had our first kid. And I was really angry about some things that I didn't know how to process. And so I felt like there were some tools that I was lacking in my like emotional tool belt. But also we had just had this baby. And I realized one day I have zero opinions about the house that I grew up in. And my parents are awesome. My sisters are awesome. The house I grew up in was great. But like I have zero thoughts of what was good and bad about it. And I felt like I should process that. So I'm not just coasting and introducing my kids into something that I haven't considered.
Yeah.
My parents, I think I can say, both grew up in houses that were very foreign to me because they did a lot of work before I was born. I'm the youngest of three. And they had done a lot of work on themselves so that my house growing up was not like their house, either of their houses growing up. And once I realized that I had not done any work to at least like thoughtfully consider what I was going to raise my son in, and I have two kids now, I thought that alongside of, I just don't know what to do with, I'm kind of angry about some stuff. So I reached out to a friend who had always talked about how great his therapist was. And I've been going to that guy off and on for 12 years. It's the greatest. I think what I've learned in therapy is unbelievable. I think everybody should do it.
I'm curious about like what it's like to be married to a therapist.
Oh my gosh. Well, in her first year after she had graduated and she was a therapist, she would get home like right before bedtime for our two kids when we were really young. And so she would walk in the door and we would kind of get through bedtime and then I would hear how things were. And she was really good at like getting home and like playing with the kids and making sure they were taken care of and they would fall asleep, and then we could kind of sit down and I could hear how things were. But there was this one day that she got home. The look on her face was just like, there was no veneer. Like there was no way of hiding what she was feeling. And she walked in the door and I went, oh my gosh, how was today? And she was like about to break out in tears. And she just goes, people are so sad. And I was like, do you want to like, I don't remember if she like walked out the door or like if I kind of took over for bedtime. I don't remember how that night played out, but like, I mean, it's real. You're taking on a lot when you're a therapist. And so I feel like my job is to, support her so that she can support a lot of people, and I don't know anything about them because of, all the rules.
Right.
But I just really like that, the person that I'm married to is out there helping other people. I really like that.
Is it tough at all? Like, the comment that, because I don't know how my wife's experience of me, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot from my understanding. There's a lot of divorce. A lot of therapists go through divorce as well. Um,
Okay.
and just like, I mean, she went much later, right, in your guys' marriage.
Yeah. 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 We weren't worried about our
Sure,
marriage when she
sure.
went to, yeah. I will say though, we were driving home from Cannon Beach in Oregon, and it was like August. And she had asked me every other year since we had met, what do you think about me becoming a therapist? And so she had asked me this quite a few times in our
Yeah.
relationship. So we're driving home. It's like a 6 hour drive home. And she asked me that. And I was like, I kind of went back to my stock answer, like, well, I think you'd be amazing at that. And, whatever we don't know about that, you would learn in 3 years of grad school. So that was kind of my pat answer. But this time she goes, I'm asking because school starts in 5 weeks. So I was like, oh. And so we took that drive home from Kenna Beach to Seattle to figure out, like, what would we do? We have an 18-month-old
Mhm.
and, a 5-year-old. How would this work logistically? And so we kind of talked for, an hour and a half. And we had enough answers to just kind of the logistical questions that I just said, I feel like whatever we don't know right now, I think we can figure out, because all of these answers have been pretty easy to figure out. I said, but as far as like you going to grad school to become a therapist, in 3 years, you're going to be a completely different person.
Mm.
And I'm going to be a completely different person. And that's if you don't go to grad school to become a therapist. So the thought of like supercharging that with like emotional intelligence and
Mm.
study and thoughtfulness, I am so on board with that. So let's do it as a team. Let's do it.
That's really interesting because I feel like at least when people come out of the Seattle school, what's going on is such an internalized change, and it's a
Hmm.
very intense process. Like
I call it therapy with stakes.
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the I think the reason why so many people got divorced in the program was because they were finding out things about themselves and they were growing in ways that they
Hmm.
felt like were in a lot of them had gotten married younger too. They were young Christian couples and when they had gotten married.
Sure.
But you're going through this change of process. You're
Yeah.
really learning a lot about yourself and you're also being called to something as well, right? And to involve your spouse in the process. I wasn't married at that point. I
You were thrice divorced at that point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, God, it seems like a lifetime ago. Um, it's been good with this one though. But just watching that process, I guess when I'm like, do you ever feel like, are you ever like, are you therapizing me right now? Or like, you seem very like interested in the process of it too. But I wonder if that's like, we're not easy people to be married to. Like,
Oh. No, I don't feel that way.
that's
Um,
fantastic.
and um, when COVID started in 2020, um, we made it 7 days before we stopped speaking to each other in our house.
That's awesome.
We were so upset at each other, and for very real reasons, but it was like all the like most specific reasons that our buttons were pressed. And we were just like super freaked out 7 days in. Um, and so our kids went to bed, and it had been like a surprisingly great day logistically. Like we were a great team still, like figuring out dinner and like play dates and whatever. And so that was nice. At least like, we could figure that stuff out. And then so our kids go to bed and we just had this talk. And oh my gosh, man, this was right when she was finishing up school. And she started like speaking about her views 3 years into grad school to become a therapist, of like with her views of who I was, who she was, who she was to me and who I was to her, and how that mirrored like past things in our lives. And like she just was giving me like her like grad school theory on our marriage. And
Yeah.
I had to like time out. I literally like did a T with my hands. I was like, can we just pause and recognize for a second that you have a new superpower after going to grad school? And I am so floored. Like I like started like, tearing up because it was just like, you are flooring me with who you are now, after 3 years of grad school. And so it was like, it was all so welcome, and it was just like unbelievable.
Mm.
What that kind of like book learning, but also kind of the gosh, what was it called? The practicum stuff, where it was like real kind of like practice therapy and stuff. Um, I was just so floored and honestly like enamored with what she had learned and what she was now using to help our relationship mature. It was really unbelievable. It was all positives in my mind. So I've been pretty floored at what it's like to be married to a therapist. I really love it. And she is like not a therapist in our relationship.
Yeah.
That was like a main thing she learned in school is how to not do this in your relationships. Only do it in the kind of therapy scenario. And so I love it. I really love it.
That, I mean, it seems like a really good fit just because like you are inquisitive in the process too.
Mm-hmm.
I am married to somebody who's kind of like the opposite of me in a lot of
Mm.
ways.
Yeah.
And so like the fact that you were so receptive to that process and more it seems like amazed at the process and the process of like what your spouse is going through and welcoming of it, I think makes a huge difference.
Mm.
Um, where I think there's maturity. I don't know when you speak about your wife and you speak about what she's doing, I can tell there's a genuine love and curiosity about each other that I
Yeah.
don't feel like. I don't know. I think it's unique and like a way to help. I don't know. It's sustainable that way. When you're genuinely curious about the other person and genuinely curious
Mm.
about what they're going through and welcoming of it, right? Like that makes a huge difference in a marriage. So that's really cool to hear because I could not. I don't know. I joke with friends and even like because we know so many people went to the Seattle school.
Mm-hmm.
We also knew a lot of like destruction of relationship that happened through that process.
And is it relationships that can't handle honesty?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I feel like that is a big problem in the world is people just don't want to hear what other people honestly feel.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of people who go to the Seattle school are finding things about themselves, but also have this desire to find things out. There's a specific paper that we did in grad school, or we read an excerpt, and I think it was called like "The Reason We Do," and it's all about
Hmm.
why we as people, we as therapists, come to therapy,
Okay.
and like the reasons behind it,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like our life experiences and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the people, like I said, whose marriages were affected by this were people who had been married for a very long time, had married when they were younger, were mostly involved in ministry at some point.
Ugh.
And there's a process of this person being the person who's going to school being deeply like impacted, called to like they don't know a lot about themselves in the first place,
Sure. Yeah.
right? And so they start tapping into all these things, and their spouse is not really along for that ride, like
Mm.
in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
so, or
Yeah.
their thoughts, and it is not uncommon to start questioning the relationship that you were in. And there's a lot of flowery language that's used at that school. Um,
Are
you
you
know,
noticing, your body as you say that?
yeah, God, yeah, just even like, yeah. So, and it really is a calling to something else, but like it really rips people apart. I don't know many people that it drove them closer.
Okay, so this is a podcast called Safe and Sound. And I feel like what we are talking about is what everybody who is playing music together should hear. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like this is all a continuation of when I played music, what we're talking about right now. If I was to write a memoir about being in a band, it would be called The Time I Accidentally Married Three Men. And there is nothing more impossible than being
Yeah.
in a creative, personal, and business venture where you're also stuck in a van or a bus with the same people day in, day out.
Yeah.
And you are getting to know them in ways you've never wanted to know anyone. And they are getting to know you in ways you've never wanted anyone to know you. It is humiliating and embarrassing and infuriating. It is impossible. I mean, Chad Pearson at the Militia Group, I don't want to like divert from,
Yeah.
marriage talk or whatever, but I mean, when you talk about marriage, you're talking about people in their 20s in a band together,
Right. Yeah.
And Chad
100%.
Pearson, one of the first things he said to me was, when you run a label, what you realize is bands break up. Rule number one, bands break up. And that is totally stuck. Chad's the greatest guy. He is so great. Um, but I mean, that just makes so much sense after being in a van
Yeah.
with people. I remember thinking one day, these three jerks that I'm in a van with the last, 5 or 8 weeks or whatever it is, they are so freaking selfish. I was so upset and stuck with them in this 15 passenger van. And we're like in Louisiana or whatever, just like the opposite corner of the country from where we live, so far from home. And then I'm not even joking. Within like 15, 20 minutes, I did something and I said something to them in the van where I realized, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I am super selfish too. Like all of us are doing it. And maybe just the four of us are stating our needs to each other,
Yeah.
Um, but this is impossible. This is impossible. And bands break up. And so I feel like if you want to know what it's like to be married, go on the road with people that you're in a band with, and you will recognize how impossible it is to be in a relationship with other human beings and how hard it is to be known and to know other people. But the other side of that coin is, isn't that what we're here to do?
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that like the meaning of everything?
Yeah.
Knowing
Yeah.
other people and having them know you in ways that maybe you kind of potentially don't want to be known. It is so penetrating and so incredible that, at some point with the guys in the band, we stopped being friends and we started being family.
Sure. Yeah.
And so now when we hang out, it's kind of like Thanksgiving in some ways, like we don't have like the racist uncle, but it does feel like somebody might say something that a racist uncle might say that
Right.
like makes
Right.
you uncomfortable and triggers you a little bit and makes you remember what it was like that one day in Atlanta or whatever. It's pretty rough out there for bands. And so I think the relational aspect of being in a band is like the number one thing that I take with me.
During that time when you were feeling all that frustration, all that stuff, like what's sustained your relationship with these human beings that was in front of you?
What's crazy is decided not to being a tour, after we decided not to be a touring band anymore, we all kind of started playing with other people and didn't come back together for like, I don't know, it was maybe like a year or two. And you just kind of, you don't play as intuitively with other people as you do with
Mm.
home base. Like at
Yeah.
that Poor Old Lou show, those guys had not played together a lot in many years. And yet it was like they had not been away a week or two.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys, because they were at home base when they were playing those Poor Old Lou songs. And so that was pretty crazy. And so when we got back together, there is a communication that happens when you're playing music with people that is on a different plane than inside jokes or, just kind of intuitively knowing that like for me, the way the guys cared for me when we were on tour was they would pull over and get some coffee. I was the only one addicted to coffee in the band, So if they pulled off the freeway to get coffee, that was because they cared for me. It was a very explicit way for those three
Yeah.
dudes to care for me. They were like, you matter, and we know that you're going to have a headache and probably be kind of a nightmare if I didn't get some coffee. So there were ways that they could show me that. But when we're playing music together, it's something I've never experienced with anybody else except that group of guys, where they know that I'm going to rush the end of a measure at the end of a verse. There's like a very specific, quarter note that I rush, and they all know it in their bones and they rush it with me,
Yeah.
That's being known in a way that,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so playing music with those guys is entirely different than playing music with anyone else on this planet. It's because of my musical relationship with them. And so it's even if they're like infuriating me, we're connecting on that level, which is just a bizarre thing to even think about, but it's just so true. And so it is like knowing other people and being known on a completely different level than anybody else in my life.
How has music affected your mental health in either a positive or negative capacity?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. My first answer is at any given moment, including right now, I'm trying to think of the perfect song for this moment. And so I feel like I'm constantly using music to emphasize and understand how I feel and how a room feels. And whether it's we've had a long day, everyone's exhausted, let's admit it and recognize it with this super mellow emotional song,
Yeah.
Or, you know what, guys? I feel like you've been phoning it in and it's kind of time for a party.
Yeah.
Let's put on USE. So as someone who is pretty disconnected from how I feel at any given moment, I feel like music is my way of trying to approach recognizing how I feel.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So that would be my main answer.
That's really cool.
One time my therapist said, "How do you feel right now?" And I was like, "I don't know. What are the options? Start naming feelings and I'll let you know what resonates." I had no idea how to even name a feeling.
Did he hand you the feelings wheel? Are you familiar with the feelings wheel?
He's never broken out the feelings wheel, and I resent him for that.
The last question that I have for you is, if you could give a piece of advice to your younger self, and say like the band years, what would you want him to know, or like what would you want to advise him on?
You know what I was so shocked by over and over again was in those years where we were really nervous about, are we doing this right? Because we're getting played on the radio, and people are coming to see our shows and they recognize our songs. It probably took me like 6 or 7 times recognizing that my gut was right. And so I would tell my younger self, you knew what the right thing was at any given moment, whether it was like how to play a song or where your band should play. I mean, especially who in this industry you should work alongside. At least back then, and this is a while ago now, this is like 2005, 2006. You meet people who are disgusting and your gut is screaming at you, this isn't someone you should work with or trust or walk alongside through this life. But they're famous, or they're this, or they're that. And you kind of second guess that. I promise you, in a while, you will recognize that initial gut feeling was the right one. You shouldn't be with that person. You should not work with that person. You recognize this in like Hollywood producers,
Sure,
where you're just like, you're disgusting. Is this just how people are? And no, your gut was right. Don't work with that person. It's not worth it. So go with your gut. Dude, it's after midnight. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you, man.
I love your podcast.
Thank you.
I love what you're doing.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Have a good night. That does it for another episode of Safe and Sound. I'm your host, Jeremy Houtsman, licensed mental health counselor. Man, Greg's the freaking best. I'd like to thank him for coming on, sharing his story, and just making me laugh. Greg has an awesome podcast called Great Bad Movies. You should definitely check it out. Safe and Sound is Labor of Love by me, Jeremy Houtsma. Opening music is Burned Out and Broken In by Beautiful Mistake. Outro music is Safe and Sound by Small Brown Bike. You can find Safe and Sound and Great Bad Movies on all major podcasting platforms. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.